Good afternoon, students, and welcome back. Currently, we have been discussing this very critical subject of packaging and material handling. Packaging, in the last session, we discussed how packaging and material handling go hand in hand for a safe movement of a particular shipment. It is essential that the product is packaged well, it goes through a proper efficient packaging, and not only an efficient packaging will ensure the safety and security of the product. Once the packaging is done, the product, the shipment has to be handled very carefully. We have already discussed packaging, the benefits of packaging, the types of packaging, the process of packaging, the challenges of packaging. We also briefly discussed something about material handling in the last class. So, we are going to continue our topic, our discussion on material handling. As we said, packaging plus material handling, both of them are equally important for the safety security of a particular shipment, because a shipment goes through a lot of movement, a lot of handling during the entire process. A good packaging will not ensure that the package will retain its own shape and nature right from the time that it leaves the origin till the time it reaches its destination, because if it is mishandled, if it is not handled efficiently, if proper care is not taken to handle the material, the shipment, it will definitely go through some damages. At the same time, even if we apply proper material handling, we use the best, most efficient way of handling materials. We use a lot of mechanical ways of handling the material, but if the packaging is not done properly, there will again be a possibility of the material of the shipment getting damaged during its journey from the origin to destination. As we said, we have already discussed the importance of packaging. Today, we are going to extend our discussion on the importance of material handling. By this time, we already know the supply chain is all about a raw material being converted into a finished good. So, there are a number of units or companies involved. So, in a particular company, for instance, for the manufacturer, when the material is completed, when a shipment is completed, it would probably be sent to the warehouse. From the warehouse, it would go to the distributor, to the retailer, and then to the customer. Now, this journey depends upon whether the shipment is moving only through a limited period of time. The shipment not only moves from one unit to the other, once it reaches the warehouse or a distribution center, the shipment is subject to a lot of movement within the warehouse. The shipment is taken to the storage area, the shipment may be taken to the sorting area, the shipment can be taken to the assembly area. So, within a particular unit or within a particular facility as well, the shipment is subject to a lot of movement. Same with the case with the distributor. Once it arrives at the distributor premises, the shipment may be subject to a lot of movement within the distributor premises. So, not only from one facility to the other, from one company to the other, but also within a particular facility. As I said, that the shipment does not, it moves either within a short distance, within the city, within a state, from one state to the other, from one region to the other, as well as from one country to the other. So, the risk of shipment getting damaged due to wrong handling of the shipment depends upon the nature of the product, the packaging of the product, the efficient transportation of the product, and the distance that it travels. So, the more distance it travels, the more efficiency needs to be applied in terms of material handling. So, you can understand that even if marketing does their job, even if the quality control, if the production has, if the manufacturing unit has produced the best of the product for the customer, if the product has been is ideal for what the market demands, if it does not go through a proper material handling, the entire purpose of sending the shipment from the origin to the customer is totally defeated if proper packaging and material handling is not applied. So, that is the reason we are discussing this particular topic of material handling. We will discuss a little more today. We will again recap what we discussed in the previous session. So, we again go back to the slide and see what we discussed last time. To start with, a little bit of a definition of material handling, how the materials are handled physically. When I say physically, how is the shipment moved from one unit center to the other, from one location to the other. Whether the shipments are moved in pieces or in groups or in bulk, because handling or mishandling or bad handling may change the characteristics of the product itself. There are certain principles we did discuss last time. When we move a material from one place to the other, we have seen this in every function of logistics, in every function of supply chain, that there are some process, there are some principles. If you remember, when we discuss warehousing, whether we discuss sourcing or purchasing, so every function follows certain principles, certain process. So does material handling. There are certain principles, some process, certain rules that material handling should follow in order to maintain and ensure safety and efficiency. Let us go back to the slide and see what are those principles that material handling should follow. Orientation, understanding the entire system, from where to where, what is the journey that is involved, what is the expected performance that is required in terms of speed, in terms of the requirement of the customer. One has to understand that a particular shipment goes through, and we have discussed this. Just for a while we come back to the board, when we discuss the third point, that it is an integrated system. That means a material, as a logistics manager, if I am responsible for handling a material in any of the units, I need to understand that there is an integration between the different facilities or the different companies through which this material passes. These could be different companies, or this could be different facilities of one single company. But we have to understand there is a connection between all of them. We again go back to the slide. That is exactly what we are saying about the integrated system. What are the package sizes? The standard package sizes. Products are not moved unless and until needed, but it has to be moved when it is needed. So, the timing is very important. It should not be moved beforehand, neither it should be moved ahead of time or beyond a particular time. Whether the materials are moved in large blocks, in bulk, or in isolation, in smaller pieces, what is the minimum travel that a particular shipment is subject to? What is the maximum space that a particular shipment will utilize? Safety and security while material handling is extremely important, and these are mandates. A company is responsible, a company is answerable to its workers, socially, to the government, to its employees, to ensure safety. And most of the accidents that happen in a particular company are because of wrong handling of materials, particularly industrial goods which are bulk, which are heavy in sizes, which are voluminous, mishandling, using wrong materials, using wrong equipments to handle the materials within the warehouse, inside a plant, within the two plants, can cause some fatal accidents, which can cause death, which can cause permanent injuries. So, coming back to the principles once again, ergonomics. While moving the material, we should ensure that we do not waste too much of fuel, we do not utilize too much of company's resources, we use more machines, we apply more of a mechanical movement of shipment rather than manual movement. Manual movement will not ensure speed, there is always a risk of accident, there is always a possibility of an error, there is always a possibility of misrouting, and obviously we cannot have economies of scale when we use manual process and ways of handling materials. Automation, we have to understand, by applying automation it can be capital intensive, that there are some investment required, but we also need to apply flexibility, because in automation, automated process of material handling follows one particular process. At the same time, we have to ensure that there has to be flexibility, there has to be other options in case of certain stoppages, in case of certain emergencies. We should be able to switch over to other forms of handling the material, other forms of moving the material from one place to the other. Let us get to the next slide. Last time also we discussed about unit load. What is a unit load? Unit load ensures the most optimum or the best way of moving a material. Now, we know that we have discussed this in packaging as well. If you remember, when we discussed packaging, we discussed primary, secondary and tertiary phases of packaging. Let us talk of one particular material, which could be a glass bottle. So this gets into a carton, this gets into a carton. So this gets to a carton. Now these cartons get into what is called a pallet. This is a pallet. When we use a number of cartons on a particular pallet, so you are actually putting a number of cartons in a particular pallet, one after the other, on top of the other, and you cover the entire pallet, you are making a unit load. That means, when you have multiple boxes placed on a pallet, on a single pallet, that ensures, that makes one unit load. So that unit load is one of the methods by which we can maximize and ensure more and more efficiency for material handling. We will quickly go through the next few slides, because we discussed. If you see, I have drawn the same picture as you can see on the slide now, that one particular item, any item, could be a glass bottle, can be a drinking bottle, a water bottle, mineral water bottle, being placed in a carton, and the carton, that is number 2. The carton is, number of cartons or boxes are placed, that is number 3, on one single pallet. So number 3 illustrates the unit load, and again number 3, a number of such pallets are being packed or being sent through a container. It could be a railway container, it could be a road container, or it could be a container meant for ocean movement for a sea container. So, if you see 3 stages, the unit item or the actual item in number 1, one particular item being inserted in a box, a number of boxes onto a pallet, a number of pallets containing number of boxes getting into the containers. That is how material handling is, efficiency in material handling is maximized. So, there are other methods, other processes. There is something called slip sheet. What is a slip sheet? Are thin pallet size sheets made of plastics. These are heavily laminated kraft paper boards or corrugated fiber board used in commercial shipping. These replace the use of traditional wooden pallets. The unit load is usually stretched wrapped or shrink wrapped for stability. So, rather than using a pallet, another efficient way of packaging for better material handling is called slip sheet. In the next slide, we actually see some specimen slip sheets. If you see, there are no pallets being used over here, but at the same time a number of bottles or number of items are packed together through slip sheets. So, there are certain advantages as well as certain disadvantages in using an unit load in material handling, and we have briefly discussed earlier also. The advantages are they provide protection, they avoid pilferage, fragile it provides some benefits in moving fragile items, mechanical devices can be substituted for hand labor. What are the disadvantages? Provides large quantity that sometimes is of limited value to resellers. So, since a unit load contains a large number of items, so sometimes what happens, the person who is receiving and who is supposed to sell the items has too much of inventory, has too many items to be sold, and that may be more than what he requires. Must use mechanical or automated devices to move. So, a unit load always needs, since it is a bulk in quantity, if you see a crate containing a wooden crate containing number of items, these are voluminous as well as quite heavy to carry. Now, it is not possible, it is not practically possible to carry or to handle this particular crate manually. It cannot be, persons cannot lift it manually physically. So, you will always need what is called a forklift. You will always need a forklift to carry this crate. So, forklift will come, the blades will go inside, there are places, and you would have seen in the video last time that I had shown in the factories, lot of forklifts, some manual forklifts, some mechanical, some forklifts which are run are automated forklifts, okay, or machine run forklifts. So, these forklifts are a must for unit loads. Unit loads, that is one disadvantage of unit loads, that it cannot be carried manually. You need to have automated system of moving these materials. The next slide actually shows you a lift truck used for stock picking. So, battery powered. So, when you have stocks in the warehouse and you need to pick up the stock from the racks for onward dispatch, such battery run, battery powered lift trucks are used to extract or to lift the material from where they are stocked or where they are placed inside the warehouse. Let us refer to the slide once again, where it gives you a little more clarity. So, various types of intermodal, these are surface containers. It is not only the machines or within the warehouse, it is also the containers which are extremely important to determine that a material is properly handled. Let us see the different types of containers, trucks, transports that are being used, which ensure safe handling of materials. Let us go refer to the slide. So, various types of intermodal surface container. When I say intermodal, between two modes, so between a rail. So, if you see a flat bulk container, a liquid bulk container, a refrigerated container, a ventilated container. So, what happens? Open top, hard top. So, we have open top containers, slide locking, fully enclosed. So, these are the different types of containers. Intermodal surface containers. When we say intermodal, we have read in the transportation what are the modes of service transportation. It is sea, it is air, it is railways and it is pipeline. So, when a shipment moves from one mode to the other, if a shipment has to be moved from roadways to railways, from railways to ocean freight or from roadways through air freight. So, these are the kinds of intermodal transports that are being used in the industry. So, we will give you some time to look at the pictures once more in the slide. You can always explore the internet, you can also search in the Google, because supply chain management, as I have been telling you from the very beginning, it is always going through some development, it is going through some modern practices. So, there are more and more modern surface containers, more modern transportation which are being practiced in the industry. You will find more and modern ways of material handling if you keep a track of the supply chain. So, there are certain material handling principles. Once again, simplifications, avoid overly complicated system, just follow some simple system. Gravity, rely on gravity to move the materials whenever possible, because the gravity itself exerts certain force and we should make use of this natural force to move materials rather than always relying on machines. Safety is of critical importance. Computerization, system for the layout of the warehouse, the cost has to be optimum, though day in and day out there are changes in the way materials are handled. More automated methods of material handling are being practiced, but we should maintain that should not exceed the cost, otherwise the cost of the product will increase. Maintenance, obsolescence, we should not use old methods of material handling, and team solution, because there is always a team who are involved, there is a group of people, there are a group of personalities, there is a team within the department. So, every team should be every member of the team should be taken into confidence to bring a solution if there is a problem. Maintenance of the machines, maintenance of the entire material handling process has to be ensured. So, these are the principles, I read them out once again. Simplify the process, use the force of gravity or the pressure or the natural attraction of the gravity as much as possible, because that would also help in moving a particular material. Ensure safety, utilize as much of computerization as possible. Systems flow, the system should move in a very systematic manner. The layout should be covered optimally, and one should follow the layout. If you go and visit a factory, you will see that there are paths which are earmarked, which are meant for material handling. One should follow that layout, one should follow that process. One has to ensure that the cost has to be maintained at a particular level, one should not exceed the cost in order to modernize the material handling process in a particular company. One should also look at modern and more cost effective, because The supply chain process is evolving, it is changing all the time. So, every function of logistics, and we have been discussing this from the very beginning, every function of logistics should look at the new and modern and efficient methods of every function. So, in material handling also there are modern methods of material handling, and we should always embrace new and modern methods to ensure safety and cost reduction rather than relying on old and obsolete methods of handling materials. Few interesting photographs. Let us go back to the slides once again, see few very simple some photographs which we would have come across in TV, in newspapers. This is just to show you what a wrong material handling or erroneous material handling would do to a particular shipment. We will take some time to focus on these pictures that will come to you one after the other, just to give you an idea as to what an improper material handling would do to a shipment which are valued at millions of dollars, crores of rupees, which takes a lot of time for manufacturing, for assembling, for packaging, which are meant for some valuable customers, which would fetch significant amount of revenue for a particular company. Even if every functional group has done his job correctly, and I did tell you at the very beginning, everything is spoiled. The entire purpose of production, packaging, marketing, investing, warehousing, everything is defeated if the material handling part, if the moving of the material from one place to the other is not done efficiently. This is what happens, and that results in severe losses to everybody, and I repeat, to everybody who is involved in that supply chain, not only the person whose shipments are being carried, the freight forwarder, the shipping line, the logistics service provider, everybody comes through a lot of damages if material handling is not done efficiently. With that, we come to the end of our topic material handling. As you would have seen in the very first, at the very beginning of this particular program on the screen, that the next topic that we are going to go to is something which is gaining a lot of importance, a lot of significance in ensuring a company's success, in ensuring the popularity of a company's brand, in ensuring in satisfaction of the customer, which is of vital importance for the entire supply chain process or for every company, and to ensure that we have a pollution free environment, we have a pollution free world, because every time a product goes through a manufacturing process, a lot of byproducts are produced which are very harmful for the environment and people and animals who live in that environment. And this particular topic or subject is called reverse logistics. We already know what logistics is all about. We also know the meaning of the term reverse. The broad supply chain process has been discussed by supplier of a raw material to the manufacturer to dealer, to retailer, and then finally to the customer. This is the forward supply chain. This is the forward logistics or forward supply chain. Down, this is called down the supply chain, this is called up the supply chain. So, the process when we go down the supply chain is called forward logistics. For some reason and for some valid reasons, there are certain reasons for which requires an item to be returned to the manufacturer by the customer. We will discuss that in detail, but when the shipment goes through a return journey, and as I said, why return journey will be discussed in the next session, but when we go through a return journey from the customer to the manufacturer and sometimes to the supplier as well is called if you remember students, while discussing the topic inbound and outbound logistics, we did discuss reverse logistics very briefly. Reverse logistics is not a function which is very popular among the companies. Companies generally tend to avoid reverse logistics, and you know why? Because the reverse logistics, the cost of reverse logistics, cost involved in moving a material back from the customer to the manufacturer and again probably back to the customer eats away 8% of the revenue. So, it eats. So, reverse logistics constitutes almost equivalent to 8%. So, if a material is sold for 100 rupees, if a material is sold for 100 rupees, one has to, and if the material or the shipment has to be returned back, the company incurs an expenditure of 8 rupees. Now, imagine a situation or take an example of a profit margin where a company operates at a margin of say 15% or 20% for instance. If it has to exercise reverse logistics, just think his profit margin from 20% is slashed straight away to 12%, because no company charges its customers for reverse logistics. No company charges a customer for sending the shipment back for a valid reason. Customers do not return shipment just for the sake of it. Either there could be a defect, it was delivered beyond the time frame, it was delivered not as per the configuration, not as per the feature, not as per the contract, it was delivered in excess of the contract, it was delivered less as per the contract, whatever the reasons may be, and that is what we are going to discuss in detail on the other side of the break. But as I said, for some reason, if the shipment needs to be sent back to the manufacturer, the company incurs an expenditure equivalent to 8% of the revenue that particular product, and that 8% revenue straight away brings down the profit margin from whatever percentage. If it is for assuming an hypothetical figure of 20%, it reduces to 12%. That is the reason why companies today, or almost every company, are a little reluctant in. Also, one has to understand, when a shipment is returned back, a company has to modify its transportation, its picking, its delivery process, because the company always wants to reduce this 8%. The company always wants to keep the reverse logistics cost at the minimum possible, because it is not fetching any revenue. It is just a cost function. Of course, in modern supply chain management, and that we will discuss at a later stage, that how reverse logistics how closed loop supply chain is also generating revenue, how reverse logistics is being converted into closed loop logistics, but that is a different subject altogether. But for the timing, we will all know that it is only a cost function, it only adds cost to the company. So, why should a company? But and just coming back to the entire purpose of a customer sending back a shipment for replacement, for repair, for substitution, whatever it may be, is totally defeated if the company fails to return the shipment at the time desired by the customer. Otherwise, the value of the shipment is reduced. It is said as a principle, the value of a shipment is lesser more the time it spends in the system. So, it should be sent back to the customer as fast as possible. And reverse logistics today has become so complicated, that companies are compelled to utilize a separate facility, manage a separate team to efficiently run reverse logistics process within a company. So, this is the importance and significance of reverse logistics. We are going to discuss reverse logistics more and more when we come back from the break in detail. What are the reasons, how efficiently this can be managed, why reverse logistics, what are the areas reverse logistics is exercised, that we will discuss on the other side of the break. Thank you.